Hey folks, so we're going to pick off up from where we were when we were exporting the model. We're going to get this imported and we're going to create a new version of this. I've got the version in here and I've got this version. So the first thing that we need to do before we do anything else is wrong folder. We'll need that folder in a second. Need the vending machine folder. Okay, so I've got a couple more things in here than you will, because I've created some examples. The main thing that you'll be finding is the vending machine FBX. Just going to click and drag that in here. And that's creating some weird artifacts. So assuming that you've set things up correctly, you'll be able to leave these all as they are. It'll auto generate some collision for you if you haven't defined some in 3ds Max, which you shouldn't have. Yeah, and then other than that, the only thing you probably want to think about is tell it to not create a material. Yours won't be set to that. Basically, just because we're going to create our own material afterwards. So, and then just click import. So I can close that. There's no worries about that. You see we've got the button as well, which we don't really need, but you know it's there if we need it. So if I just import that now, you can see that despite my best efforts, it is kind of the wrong scale. Thankfully, this is something that we can alter relatively easily. So we'll scale that up. So we've got a nice, decently sized vending machine. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to import some textures. So vending machine. So I'm going to import 2 textures. Yours, I believe, will be a different name. I think it'll be Doggo and then Vending Emission 1. I accidentally overwrote the file in question, but I'm just going to use these 2 for the purposes of this. So just click and drag those 2 in. And then I'm going to try, I think I should be able to do this. Yep, apply it directly to the model. It'll take a second. Yeah, it'll take a second. Obviously, it takes a second to load. Keep in mind that the material editor can be quite unstable. So you probably want to actually make sure you've saved your work before you start messing with it, because it can cause your program to crash or become unstable. So yeah, we've got a material created. So if we just double click that. So it took a second just to load because it creates a rendering of the texture. You can see that by default it's connected this material up to here, which is great. That's what we want. That does some of the work for us. The only other thing that you'll notice in this version that we've got set up here is that the texture is quite dull in comparison to this one. So what is missing is the emissive texture. So if we connect that across, and then click and drag that to here. Whoops, I missed. Connect that to there. You'll see that it's updated here, but it hasn't updated here. Like with compiling your code, you need to click apply. And just as a heads up, you should probably be really careful with the material editor, because if you've got 20 editions of this model in your level and you accidentally click apply, you can end up crashing your game or even breaking your computer. So yeah, just kind of err on the side of caution of messing with the material editor. You know, don't stray too far in just kind of doing experimental stuff. Try to stay reasonably by the book to avoid kind of causing you a world of pain, or at least back up your stuff relatively regularly. So yeah, what we're going to do from here is we're going to update this texture from this to something new, which is what your task is going to be. It's going to be to kind of create your own texture, and yeah, that'll be great. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to the vending machine file. Basically, you're going to need to find yourself something equivalent to, if you can't get access to Photoshop, There are a lot of free alternatives out there. There's things like GIMP. There's things like Krita, which is Krita. Yeah, there's a variety of different tools that you can kind of have a look into, which are kind of free alternatives to Photoshop. For the purposes of this, I'll be using Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is, when you've found the tool that you want to use, just click and drag in. Oh, I just want this for now. I'm going to click and drag in this here into a new file. Open it up, and I'm going to basically create a new texture for this. So before we go any further, the first thing that we need to do, make sure you're fully zoomed out in here. And just to let you know, let me just quickly check something. I just want to check the microphone's working, because the last time I recorded this, it didn't include the audio, so I had to re-record it. The first thing that you will cover real quick is, in terms of shortcuts, if you hold space, you can kind of navigate around. You can't see it right now, but if you hold spacebar, you can kind of, and then click and drag, you can kind of move around a scene, which is quite nice. Holding Alt and then scrolling allows you to zoom in and out. There's a load of shortcuts you can look into on your own time to kind of figure this stuff out. But if you're kind of moving around, those are the main two. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that shortcut to zoom all the way back out. And then we're going to import the UV template. So this right here, we're going to click and drag this on here like that. And what this is going to do is give us like a visual framework for what is visible on the model. Just so we stay within the bounds of what we're meant to be doodling on, like a stencil almost. When you've brought that in, you can just click enter to confirm that being imported. We're not actually going to draw on this layer. We're going to click this little padlock button. I'm going to lock it so we can't edit it or accidentally draw on it. The layering system down here is basically where you're going to be doing like a lot of your work. Like Photoshop is all about layers. The thing that you want to do when you're working in Photoshop is what's kind of known as, I think it's constructive editing rather than destructive editing, which is, destructive editing would be the equivalent of, getting the eraser to kind of remove a section of an image, rather than creating layers of stuff which you can kind of hide and show, so you can kind of adjust things without destroying elements that you have to undo to get back. Building up an image out of layers is a lot better than just kind of drawing it all in one. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our first layer. We're going to call this gradient. So you can click on that, gradient. And the place you create your new layers is here, this tiny piddly button in the corner. It's kind of ridiculous that they've got such a ridiculously small button for such an important function. We're just going to call that gradient. We're going to come to the Marquee Tool, which is this, what I like to call the line of ants. And we're going to click and drag from one corner of the display to the other. And we're going to come to what might be already for you the gradient tool, but for me is the paint bucket tool. To change between them, you just hold and then click like that. I'm gonna just choose a gradient. I've got this custom palette. You can kind of apply whatever you fancy. Let me do this right here. I don't know if this is gonna look good or not, but we'll see. Oof. Okay, that's horrible. Let me try again. Oh, that's even worse. I'm going to try and create something. I think that's what I want. Basically what I'm doing is I'm picking two colors. One for the like, in Photoshop you usually have two colors to work with, and you can alternate between them. The gradient tool uses those two colors as a reference when you're creating your gradient. Yeah, which is really handy. So, and if you want to kind of have a straight line when you're drawing this, hold Shift. Yeah, and use the full length of the image to kind of drag the gradient out. I'm just going to go back. Oh, and one more thing. For undoing in Photoshop, there's two things. So there's Control and Z, which just undoes the last thing, and then there's Control Alt and Z, which kind of allows you to go further and further back. So I'm happy with what I've got there. It might look horrendous when we actually get it in Engine, but we'll see. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import some image material. So you can search around online to do this. You'll notice that for this, I'm not going to create a layer this time, because when I bring in an image, it will actually create a new layer for me. So I've got a pre-decided picture from all these adorable dog pictures. I've got this image right here. And yeah, I'm just going to use the, I'm just going to move this around using this. So when you pasted it, kind of brought in the image, you'll be able to kind of move it around. If you don't have this option available, if you come up to the top right hand corner, you should have the transform tool that you can use to maneuver around with. And you'll need to place the file. You can also confirm that by pressing enter. Yeah, so now we've got this cute picture. You can use the grid, what I said with the UV, you can use that as a reference for kind of lining this up with everything else. So I'm going to scale this down just a little bit. Just move that to there. Nice and central. If I hold Shift, that will keep things nice and proportional when I'm doing that. And then if I push enter, that'll confirm the scale. Okay, so we've got our file in here. The only other thing we need to do is we need to, if you've imported it as a file, you may need to convert it to a raster image instead of a smart object. If you've got that little symbol there, that means it's a smart object. Sorry, I'm just really paranoid about recording. Okay, yeah, I'm recording. Okay. If you right click, you can click rasterize layer, this option here, and that will allow you to edit it freely. And then the other thing that we're going to do is, I'm just going to rename this for good practice, dog layer. Okay. And then I'm just going to click this button right here. So this button, again, like the mask, the layer tool, is a really irritatingly subtle tool. It's one of the, arguably, the most important function in Photoshop, and pretty much like what is a Photoshop kind of known as. You click on that, it's going to create a layer mask. So what a layer mask does is, as I mentioned before, it allows you to kind of create a, well, as the name suggests, create a mask of an image that you can see that is being created in the mask here, and basically it's using a black and white image to kind of define what area can be visible and what isn't. So yeah, I'm just using black and white, as you can see on this little preview here, to just mark out what I want of the image to show up. And this looks really counterintuitive because like the image isn't here. So there's two ways that we can do this. So the first way is when you initially apply the mask, if I go back a bit just so you can see this, I went back too far. If you click on the actual mask itself, make sure you've got the mask selected, and go to Image, Adjustment, and Invert, it's going to set the entire image to black and will hide it. So what I can do now is if I choose white, rather than having to erase the entire image, I just need to show the areas that I'm interested in, which is this right here. Cool. So that, just blend the edges of that. You might want to choose a softer brush so you can get all of that. You can also hide that using the little eye tool, just so you can kind of refine this a little bit better. I'm not gonna go like super to the edge. I want there to be kind of a bit of a fuzz to the edge. I quite like that, as you'll see in the other designs I did. Cool. And using X just allows you to switch between black and white very quickly, so you can kind of just create something pretty weird. Okay. It annoys me that you can't see his other ear, but it's okay. I think I might actually add that back. Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So we've got that layer now. The only other thing that I might want to do is I can apply a layer filter. So back down to our layers here, if I click on this button here, I can apply some kind of layer filter. And then I can, once I've selected that window, that drop down, I can kind of alternate between them. And yeah, I can apply all sorts of bizarre effects. I think, let's have a look. That one's quite nice. Pin light. Okay, I'll come back to that. Yeah, I'm gonna go pin light, I think. Yep, brilliant. Okay, so I've got my gradient, I've got my dog layer, and I've got my UV template, which is currently hidden. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a text layer. So if I come down to here, just going to click on the text button. It'll take a second to load, and I'm just going to create a. I'm going to create a text font. So I'm going to just choose something classy, because this is meant to be fine cigars. So let's do. Ooh. Sorry, this is taking so long. Let's go for that font. That looks pretty wild. I can always adjust this. I'll just need to drag out a box when I'm creating a text block. So I'm going to call this bead okay, so bead cigars. Bead is the dog. That font is illegible, so let's choose something else just real quick. Yeah, it looks kind of Art Deco. That's wonderful. Okay. Great. So I'm just going to nudge that down a little bit. And let's say I wanted to kind of make it look a little bit more classy. What I can do is I can come down to here and I can add some effects to layer. So if I just double click on it, I can get to the effects layer. And I can add a bevel to this. So yeah, I can add like a variety of different effects. There we go, that's the business. So if I just have a mess around with these, you can kind of mess with them at your own leisure. I think the shadow, we can drop that a little bit. Damn, this is looking classy. Yeah. Yeah, these tools are fantastic. You can basically do a lot of different stuff with this relatively easily. Actually, that kind of ruined the effect. Yeah, okay. So, nope, don't want that. Can I add an inner bevel and an outer bevel? Oh, I guess it's one or the other. Never mind. Yeah, I'll go for that. Oh, cool. Okay, so I can zoom back now. What's great is you can this. Oh dear. I'll click OK. There we go. Oh, stop. Okay, so I can preview it as I'm messing around with it. There's lots of different options to kind of add and tweak and refine if you fancy. You can add gradients or all sorts of stuff. I'm kind of happy with how this is looking. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now, and just to quickly show you as well, this isn't just applicable to text. You can use it for all sorts of stuff. I'm just going to create a new layer to show you. If we carry on with if we just kind of create a metal panel, inverted commas here, that looks pretty duff. But if I go into the layers, I can come in here. If I do something like bevel and emboss, for example, I can go in and I can now I could create something like a grate. Obviously this is janky as hell, but that's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, I could create something like a maintenance grate, something like that, and then if I'm not happy with how that looks, I could nip into the nip back into here, into the layer editor, and I can mess with these numbers. Maybe I'll make it chiseled, so that looks really looks legit. I can mess with the sizing. I could soften it if I wanted to. Yeah, there's even mess with the lighting angle. Yeah, you can use it to create the illusion of 3D, which is quite nice. Can be quite useful when you're doing things like your normal maps and things like that as well. Yep, so I'm happy with my this here. There's only one more thing that we need to do, which is kind of self-evident if we enable the text. Is you can see here that this is meant to be a hole. So if I real quick just give me a quick second. So what you'll probably want to do is you want to create a layered version of this. You'll want to save a version of it so you don't overwrite your original image. So you have a backup of your kind of layered image. But what we're going to do for the purposes of this is I'm going to save this as a separate file. You see that I saved that as a PNG. So I've got to wait for it to finish saving. I think that's done. Yeah, so just so you see that in slow motion. So if you want to save it as a Photoshop file, you just do it here like that. I would recommend for what you're importing as a texture into Photoshop, into Unreal, use PNG. So I've got this right here. And there's only one, if we try and import this now, if I just come back into Photoshop, if I actually delete this texture from here, so not delete it from the project, just delete it from the, I can bring in my new texture. I think I have to bring it in here first and then I can bring it across. So that's there. And then connect that. and then click apply. You can see that has that's applied. Now the only thing oh, actually that's worked fine. So the only other thing that you might want to consider is if you come back to here, you'll see this section here is where you've got your kind of the can material. So if you wanted to, you could kind of define this area as, you know, you could use the Marquee tool and you can just cut out that section. I prefer to do that, but because the texture is over here, that's not going to cause a problem. You know, just for the sake of it, I'd rather go through that extra step just to be sure. But the other thing that we want to do, now that we know that texture works and displays fine, is we're going to create one more layer, and that's going to go in between here and your gradient, so the background and the gradient. And that is going to be called the emissive layer. And what this is going to do is basically give the kind of appearance of a glow to the machine itself. So if I save that out, again, file, save as. Make sure you don't overwrite. So doggo 3 miss. Those settings can stay as they are. If I then come back into Unreal and then bring in the emissive layer and then come back to my material, remember to keep saving this stuff. Remember it's Control, Shift and S to save everything. Yep, so let's bring in that material and then I'm just going to connect that to here like that. And now, if I apply that, there we go. Good Boy Bagels, we've got Bead Cigars, and then in the back here we've got a can of Real Good Pupper. Brilliant. Okay, so yeah, just to kind of recap again, yeah, what I want you to do is redesign the kind of front panel for this. Try to keep things, you know, keep in mind that this is an academic submission. So like, try to kind of to not include memes in that, or at least try to keep things appropriate to what is an academic submission. You know, I would opt for kind of adorable pictures of dogs. Just make sure you reference the images. I owned these images, so it's fine. Yeah, so other than that, if you kind of make refinements to your image and you want to update those changes, you can see that this hasn't been updated since I last changed it. You can just click this button up here when you open it, re-import, and that should update the image. Let's try to save that. Pretty sure I updated that. Oh no, I haven't. Never mind. Yeah, that's fine then. Yeah, but that's how you would do it if you needed to re-import the image. Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, if any of you have any questions, you know, more than happy to answer them. And yeah, look forward to seeing your designs. Oh, sorry, one more thing before we go. Again, just to reinforce, make sure that you back up your projects. Well, in general, it's something you should be doing anyway, but make sure you back up your projects. But Just be careful using the material editor because it can crash your computer and it can crash Unreal. So the one in particular that may catch you out is the emissive texture tool. So if you include lots of emissive textures in your project that are particularly emissive, so if you added like a multiplier to it, it's going to slow your project down significantly. So if you are going to use emissive textures in your project, keep them limited to a relatively small amount. Don't go too go to town with them because they'll run fine when you're an editor, but when you actually export the game, it'll run like it'll run really badly. Cool. Okay, so yeah, I just needed to cover that. Yeah, look forward to seeing your work.